All right. Well, this is Down to the River Radio Show with your host, Scott Roos. And on the line with me today is the one and only Genevieve Fisher. How are you doing?
I'm good, Scott. How are you?
Great. Well, I mean, now I know there's a lot that we could talk about in the world of Genevieve with, 2019. But of course, you received an award, right? It was 20 under 40. What did that
Yeah.
exactly entail? And I think that was an award that you received in your home of London, Ontario.
Yeah, so that was super exciting. I got nominated, so it was um, a little bit of a process. We had to fill out a bunch of info, kind of explaining what I've accomplished we had to fill out a whole thing, basically outlining what I've kind of accomplished as an independent artist over the years, and it was just an honor to receive that award. I mean, I'm sure there were a lot of people who got nominated, so to have been selected was amazing.
So, what was the organization that gave you the award, Genevieve? I was trying to find that information, but
Yeah, so it was actually the London Inc. magazine. So they're a business magazine based out of London. And I think every year they do this kind of business awards for, people who are under the age of 40 who have been really successful. So it was the London Inc. magazine, which was really cool. So to see my picture in there and the award they gave us was absolutely beautiful. So yeah, it was an honor, and I mean, obviously, as a female, independent artist, to receive something like that really meant a lot to me.
sure, yeah. Well, now I suppose it would make the most sense then to just back this up a little bit. I mean,
Sure.
I know you were raised in London, Ontario. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong here, Genevieve, but when I think of country music, I want to think of the prairies, right? I mean, I want to think of
Yeah.
Alberta and Saskatchewan and to a lesser extent, maybe Manitoba. So, I mean, what inspired you to basically do what you're doing now and to be as successful as an independent artist, as you mentioned, for as long as you have been?
Yeah. Well, growing up, my grandparents were a huge influence on me. They absolutely loved country music, and they were always playing country music in their home. They lived in a
Right.
small town outside of London, so yeah, like I grew up listening to Shania Twain, of course, and Patsy Cline and Brenda Lee and Merle Haggard, and so I fell in love with it at a young age. But as the years went on, as I kind of became a teeny bopper. I experimented with pop, but there was always just something that brought me back to country music. And to be honest, I feel like it was the storytelling and just the honesty behind the music. And I just loved the sound of it too. So that's kind of what got me hooked were my grandparents.
So then, your very first show, I mean, to take us back here, like, what was that very first show that you ended up doing?
Oh my gosh. Well, when I think of growing up, I mean, I did a ton of competitions throughout Southern Ontario.
Right.
And actually, kind of a cool little story, but Kira Isabella and I used to compete against one another when
Oh,
we were
wow.
really young. So we've known each other for years, but so that's really when, I obviously started performing. But when I think of my first performance with a band, it was actually in my community of Chippewa, the Thames. So my
Uh-huh.
dad is native. So I did my very first show there. I opened up for Crystal Shawanda, and it was amazing. When I look back at that night, just being on stage and getting to meet Crystal uh, was amazing. It's something I'll always remember.
Right, right. Yeah, I mean, I would imagine there's a certain exhilaration just being a performer myself. I mean, you kind of know there's something magical that happens on the stage. Something just clicks and you're like, this is what I want to do. I would imagine you very much have
Yeah.
felt that many times throughout your career.
Yes. Absolutely. And I mean, you know, as I'm sure just feeding off of your audience and just seeing the way they react to your music and how they respond to your show. It's amazing. So I love doing live shows.
Yeah.
it really is one of my favorite aspects of my career.
It inevitably though, like being an independent artist, I mean, there is a lot of adversity that can kind of creep up on you. So I mean, how do you deal with that aspect of your career, Genevieve?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like being an independent artist is definitely very, very different than being a signed artist. But I mean, I think it's really helped me grow in so many different aspects. Even in terms of the business itself, the writing process, everything. Yeah, it's really helped me grow.
Yeah, yeah. No, I mean that makes sense, and I guess and please don't take this the wrong way, but I
Yeah,
mean, I would imagine the operative question was, I think you've been maybe at this, professionally for between 10 and 12 years. Am I right?
yeah, you are right on the ball. Yes,
And
yeah.
I know you've had like immeasurable success, but I mean, how come things haven't quite clicked, like in terms of a record deal or a signing for you, do you think?
Right. You know what? It's funny because I do get asked a lot, like, why are you signed to the label? Or to be honest, it's actually been sort of a personal decision.
Uh-huh.
Um, as awesome as a record deal would be, there are a lot of things I think that have deterred me from signing with a label. I
Sure.
mean, if the right deal ever came along, absolutely. But I mean, from other artists who have had previous record deals, you also hear of a lot of horror stories. And even close friends of mine who have worked with some people in the industry just say, like, it was one of the worst times of my life. Like, one of my good friends said, like, working with a certain person kind of shattered her a little bit. And just hearing those stories, I mean, I have so much freedom at this point in my career to do what I want. I'm married. I have hopefully in the next couple of years, start a family.
Yeah.
So, and I mean, as sad as it is to say, as a female artist, I mean, as you get older, even though I know I'm not old, I'm 27 years old,
Yeah, of
but
course.
it's crazy to think that some labels sort of ask that question. Well, are you going to have kids? And as a female artist, it's kind of like, well, what does that really have to do with anything?
Yeah.
But at this point, I do have the freedom to say yes or no to things, or do things at my own pace. And I mean, obviously, I've even had family members say, like, don't you feel like you should be further along in your career? But I can genuinely say I'm so happy with how my career has progressed. And of course, being signed to that label and having that huge fame, of course, would be awesome. But at what expense? You know
Yeah.
what I mean? I never want to look back on my career, though, and think, like, oh man, I shouldn't have done that, or I should have done that. But there's so many. It's a crazy industry.
Well, now let's talk about that freedom a little bit. I mean, you mentioned how
Yeah,
you've got the freedom to do what you want. I mean, one thing I've noticed just on the different streaming formats and stuff that your music is on is that it seems like you are releasing very, very high quality singles, of which 1943 Nanna's song was your most recent.
yeah,
Yeah, so I mean, tell me a little bit about that song, because I know there's a good story behind it.
yeah. So I wrote 1943 back in 2017. I was in Nashville, doing my writing trip, and I had a co-write with my friend Jeff Cohen, and I had this idea. I had this title, 1943, which my Nana, she's been a huge part of my life since I was she's the one who always said, she helped start my career, and she truly did. So I went into the write and I said, Jeff, I have this title, 1943, and I want to write this song about my Nana. And he's like, I love it. And he was the perfect person to write this song. He has like an extensive background. So, we sat down, we wrote the song fairly quickly in like an hour and a half, 2 hours ish.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember sitting in this session, and we were kind of halfway through the song, and I got super emotional and I started crying, and Jeff just kind of looked at me and he put his hand on my shoulder and he's like, Jen, this is the exact reason why we do this, why we write songs, because it brings out so many emotions in us. And yeah, it was just an amazing write, and I was so excited to show my Nana the song, and I never really showed it to her until I officially recorded the song because I didn't want her to hear, you know, our rough demo on the phone. I wanted to wait until she was able to hear the full, you know, the produced copy of it. So my producer Jason Massey, of course, recorded the song, and I was just so happy with how it turned out. It's exactly what I wanted, and my Nana was thrilled, and she's so proud. Yeah.
Right, right, and of course, as she should be, because I mean the song is a great song. But I mean, Jason Massey. I mean, here's a name as a producer that I've heard you mention in other interviews. I mean, is he kind
Yeah.
of your go-to producer? Like, did he also work on
Yes.
Out of Towners?
Yes. So I started working with Jason back in 2016, maybe even earlier, 2015. He recorded my songs, Blame It On You, Take It On Home, You Me We, Out of Towners, Between You and Me. So we've been working together for several years, and it's just worked. It's kind of that thing, once you find something that really works, why change it? Don't fix it if it ain't broke, right?
Yeah.
So he's amazing. I feel like we clicked ever since we met. Every time we write a song together, we always both leave the right saying like, we got another good one. We always just seem to work really, really well together. So that's something I don't really look at changing anytime soon.
Yeah, well, now, I mean, describe that click for us. I mean, how do you know as an artist that it's the right fit, and what does Jason specifically bring to the table? And another curiosity of mine, I suppose, is I'm just peppering questions I hear, but I mean, now you mentioned how you work a lot in co-writes. My other question is, how much input do you have into the arrangements when it comes to when the full product is put together?
Yeah. So, I mean, so to answer the first part of the question, so, Jason just has this really, I don't even know how to explain it, just a gentle way about him. He's a very easygoing, relaxed person. So that in itself is really nice, just to be working with someone who's just so chill when we're recording, even in our writes. We just really mesh well. I mean, I'm an outgoing person, so I don't know if it's because I'm super super outgoing and he's super chill, which is awesome. But yeah, even since the first time we wrote, when I left that write with him, I was like, wow, that was just really good. It just I didn't feel stressed out, and I feel like I've learned so much from him. He's a phenomenal songwriter as well.
Yeah. Well, it
And
sounds
then
like
even
now you're able to get out of your comfort zone a little bit and not
yes,
feel so self-conscious when you put yourself out there. I think that's kind of the vibe I'm getting
absolutely.
from you.
Yes, absolutely. And I mean, once you find that comfort with certain people, and it's funny, I have found over the years I haven't really switched up a ton of my co-writers, just because I've found these people that I feel super comfortable with, that I continue to learn from. I mean, I'm sure it's important to throw some new people in there, but which I do the odd time. But once you find those people that you really click well with, it's super important, because a writing process is super personal as well.
Yeah.
I draw a lot from personal experience or whatever, but yeah, so you're absolutely right about the comfort thing.
So then when it comes to the actual arrangements of the song, I mean, where are you at artistically in terms of your input?
Yeah, I haven't ever really dabbled too much into the production side of things, so I really trust Jason when it comes to that. I mean, of course, I have input if I feel like I'm not loving a certain instrument, or if I'm not really liking a certain, melodies that he's kind of thrown in there. Of course, I'll tell him, but that's one thing too that I love about it. I trust him so much with the songs, and even when we've released to radio, that's one thing that people always come back and say, that the production on it is phenomenal. So
Yeah.
I really trust him when it comes to the production side of it and the arrangement and all that.
Yeah. And you mentioned now that you go to Nashville to do your co-writing. So I mean, I
Yeah,
guess that you've got to be in a pretty focused mindset, because I know there's a lot of artists that the environment needs to be just right in order to like push forward and work in that process. So I mean, when it comes to your own personal process, like, is there anything special that needs to happen in order for it to take place?
you know what? Not entirely, but I mean, definitely. I definitely feel like leaving home, going to Nashville, getting into that mindset. I know I'm there to write. It definitely brings out a more creative side of me. Um, Not that I don't write at home. I definitely do. That's where I come up with my ideas and whatnot. But I think just you know leaving the country, going into a place that's all about country music, it definitely gets the mind running and just, yeah, it brings out a different side of me. So I love kind of getting out of my comfort zone in that sense as well.
Yeah. Well, now for those of us that have never been to Nashville, which I haven't, I'd love to go, mind you, but I mean, I just
Yeah.
have not had the opportunity. I mean, they don't call it Music City for nothing, right? I mean, there's a lot of
Yeah.
songwriters and musicians now that are, deliberately making the decision to go and either work in Nashville or live in Nashville. I mean, describe
Yeah.
the overall vibe that
Oh,
you see, get just sort of as that small town girl, so to speak.
yeah. It's so interesting because I feel like a lot of people that have been to Nashville, even though it's a big city, it feels like this small town in a way. I mean, everybody just everybody that's there just loves country music. And I'll never forget my first time going down to Nashville. Um, was when I went to actually record my first album. And I swear you had to peel me off the ceiling. I was on cloud nine, just being in the studio and working with these insanely talented musicians. It just was a whole different world. And I mean, of course, being in Canada and country music is huge here as well, but it's different there. It's just there's this buzz around it, and yeah, it just inspires you in so many different ways. Just even even going down to Broadway for the first time and seeing all the honky tonks and hearing people play, it's so cool. It's an
Yeah.
amazing place. So you definitely have to go.
I can
You do.
imagine. So yeah, yeah, yeah. Just to wrap up here, I don't want to keep you too much longer, but
Yeah.
I know, like, another one of your sort of quote unquote more recent singles is Out of Towners. So I mean, just give us a little bit
Yeah.
of background information on that one.
Yeah, so that's a song that I actually wrote with my producer Jason Massey. Um, I had gone into the write with him with the title Out of Towner, and initially I kind of wanted to write at that time of my when I wrote the song. I was feeling almost a bit of like a black sheep a little bit. I just felt like I was going through a bit of a hard time, and I felt like I just wasn't fitting in.
Mm-hmm.
Not necessarily, in a town that I'm living in, but just I just felt like I wasn't fitting in. I was going through a bit of a hard time, so I wanted to write this song called, out of town, or feeling like I don't feel like I fit in. But he sat there and he started kind of playing around on the guitar, playing this really cool melody, and he's like, "What if we switch this around, Jen, to say something more like, you know, you take off with someone you really like and you go to a different town and you live it up for a night and you don't really care what you do because you don't live there." I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, I'm digging this. Um, so yeah, we sat down and wrote the song together, and he looked at me. He's like, "Well, we got another good one." I'm like, I loved it, even in with our rough demo that we had done, and Jason, obviously being the producer, came to me with an amazing demo, and I said, "You know what? I think this is going to be one of my next singles." So I went back down to Nashville and recorded it with him, and out came Out of Towners, and people loved it, which was awesome. So I'm super happy with the outcome of it. It's just so cool, especially being a co-writer on a song and just seeing the whole process of it.
Yeah.
It's really cool.
Yeah, for sure. Well, now, of course, my show is called Down to the River. I mean, I feel like even in an urban center, nature in Canada is never all that far away. I mean, are you an
Yeah,
outdoorsy person? I mean, there's so many
I
great country
am.
music songs about being outdoors, right?
Yes, I'm a huge outdoors person. I almost daily go on walks like in our conservation areas, which are super beautiful, just outside of London. But
Right.
yeah, I love the outdoors. Um, we love to go snowmobiling in the winter, but yeah, I love outdoors.
What's
Yeah.
your favorite thing about it?
You know what? I find, especially when I'm alone, I have a dog. Her name's Lila. So I walk her every day, and it's just my moment to just get outside and take some deep breaths and just kind of relax and ground myself a little bit. It's for me, it's definitely very therapeutic to get outside and just soak it all in. And yeah,
There's a
it's
certain
awesome.
enlightenment, right, about getting out, just with the stars around you too. I find in being in the
Absolutely.
fresh, even it doesn't have to be the winter necessarily, but there's even
Yeah.
something about the winter that's so,
Oh,
immediate that you feel nature all around you, right? You know what I'm
I
saying?
know. Yes, absolutely. It was funny the other, and I never walk with headphones in ever. I always just love to like walk and clear my mind. I find sometimes I've like grabbed my headphones and I'm like, maybe I'll listen to a podcast or listen to some songs. I'm like, no, I need to clear my mind and just get outside. And you're so right though, especially in the winter. I love just taking some deep breaths of the fresh air, and yeah, it's awesome. It's a great way to clear your mind.
Yeah. Now, just to wrap up here, I think you've got some big plans moving forward in 2020, right? I mean, did I hear something about there
Yeah.
maybe being an EP, like more than, 3 or 4 songs coming up here?
Yeah. So, you know what? It's so funny. I mean, we get asked all the time, are you going to do an EP? Are you going to do an album? And um, actually, and even more recently, I have a lot of people asking, are you ever going to do a Christmas album? So that's kind of on the horizon as well. I think we're seriously thinking about doing a Christmas album, but I definitely have a lot of really cool songs that I would love to release on an EP. So it's definitely in the future. Well, I I may be doing a duet with someone coming up.
Oh,
So yeah, so I'm super excited about that. Once I'm able to give some more info, I can't wait to talk more about it. But I'm actually heading into the studio tomorrow to do some recording for that. So
nice.
lots of really exciting things coming up, and some other collaborations that I'm super excited about. So
Right.
yeah, stay tuned.
Yeah, so I mean, where is the best place that we can go to find out the news in the most immediate way?
Definitely Instagram. So my Instagram handle is Genevieve Fisher Music. And of course, you can find me on Facebook, just Genevieve Fisher.
Right on. Well, thanks, Genevieve. I really appreciate your time.
Oh,
Thanks
no
for
problem,
coming
Scott.
down to the river with me.
No problem. This was awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and good luck in the future, and I'll certainly be keeping tabs on what you got going on in 2020, and hopefully we can do this
Thank
again.
you. Yes, absolutely. I'd love to chat more with you.
Right on. All right. Well, have a good day.
Okay. Yeah, you too, Scott.
Okay. Bye bye.
Okay, bye bye.